I'm Christina Shee, the Associate Director for Press Forward. Today, I am joined by our Director, Dale Englund, and Melissa Davis, our Network Manager. On behalf of the Press Forward team, we extend our continued gratitude to all of you who are working to make this sector and our communities stronger. We appreciate you all taking time out of your busy days to learn more about this open call on infrastructure. So our goal is to spend the next hour taking you through important information and have you leaving feeling prepared as you put your materials together for this open call. Next slide, please. To kick things off, Dale will talk about Press Forward and how this open call fits into our national initiative. Then we'll dive into the specifics of the open call, walk you through eligibility criteria, break down the application process and how we plan to evaluate proposals. And finally, we will open things up for a Q&A. Dale, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. I hope everybody can hear me. Happy holidays, whatever holidays you celebrate over the next few weeks. Let's talk a little bit about always how Press Forward is structured. And we always want to make sure people understand that. We always start with an overview. We started a year ago now, and we're up to over 70 funders that are supporting this collaborative, supporting local news. And there are 3 ways that those funders can engage with us. First, we have our pooled fund. We have about 13 funders and counting in the pooled fund who've given their money to us to help make investments on their behalf in lots of different ways. And in fact, this open call today on infrastructure and the one we just did a few months ago on gap coverage, all the dollars came out of that pooled fund. So you have those 13 foundations to thank for this. Secondly, we have our aligned funders. And that's really the bulk of the $500 million that's been pledged so far for the next 5 years. Most of that money is in the aligned grant-making bucket, and that is individual foundations who are members of Press Forward doing grant-making on their own time with their own priorities, but joining us in terms of letting us know what they fund, working together to share what they're funding so that they can find common ground across those funding opportunities. And then lastly, and one of the most exciting things that we're doing over the last few months is we now are up to 31 Press Forward chapters in 26 states and more coming. You can think of these as mini Press Forwards. Some of them have pooled funding that you may have seen open calls from, like our chapters in Minnesota, Chicago, and North Carolina. But the majority of our chapters are actively fundraising among their peers. They were led by different types of foundations, often community foundations, and they raise money from their fund holders before they can get to the point of grant making. So over the next year, you will see some of them starting to make grants. Next slide. We have 4 strategic pillars within Press Forward. Everybody should know this at this point, hopefully. And when we open up open calls, they are around these 4 pillars. We cannot do everything in the local news space. And so we've selected these things thinking they're going to have some of the best outcomes and the most, I'm thinking of the word. Anyway, they are sustainability, infrastructure, equity, and policy. And you see, and we'll talk a lot about today on the infrastructure on policy. And let me just be clear, because not everybody understands how Press Forward works. When we do open calls, those open calls will be on different things. There's so many issues that are facing, frankly, this local news industry. And so we will not do the same open calls every time. And so people ask us, well, can I apply since I didn't get it last time? Well, this next open call, for example, on infrastructure, frankly, some of the groups that applied last time wouldn't qualify for this. We are purposely changing up the open calls in order to address various issues in the sector. Not everybody will qualify for every open call. Our last open call, as some of you may recall, was on local coverage gaps, and we ended up funding small outlets under $1 million, and we ended up funding about 205 of those groups. I just want to be clear, I'm going to say it, you're going to probably hear it multiple times. We pick different themes for the open calls. They will not always be the same going forward because we're trying to address various problems in the industry. I'm going to hand it back to Christina now to talk about this current open call on infrastructure.
Thank you, Dale. So everything that we cover in this presentation can be found in our program guidelines. So visit pressforward.news/opencall to find versions in English and in Spanish. So over the last few decades, rapid changes in technology have impacted every facet of the news industry. The story is not new. These changes impact how news organizations produce stories, reach audiences, raise revenue, and cultivate talent. And at the same time, a dramatic decline in the number of professionals at independent local news outlets have left many dedicated journalists and news leaders running on fumes. Next slide, please. We believe that local news outlets should be easier to start and sustain. This is why Press Forward's open call on infrastructure will address the common challenges that all newsrooms face. We are seeking scalable, replicable ideas, tools, or technologies that will impact the field in one of 4 areas, and I'll get to those categories in a bit. For this open call, we expect to award a total of $20 million across 20-30 applicants. Grant sizes will range between $500,000 to $1.5 million over 2 to 3 years, though we may award grants outside this range and timeframe. Now, it's important to note that all grants will be considered project grants, not general operating funds. So this means that grants will have specific activities, budgets, and expected outcomes. Next slide, please. So this is probably the most important part of the presentation, what we are looking for in proposals from each applicant. So if there's one thing that you take away from today's info session, it's about what we're going to say about proposal and organizational eligibility. So I want to bring it back to the initial objective. We are here to invest in ideas and solutions that address newsrooms' shared challenges. So all proposals must do at least one of the 4 things: experiment with new solutions to common challenges, impact and inform the field nationwide, pilot ideas locally that can be replicated in other regions, and/or have a proven track record that requires a deeper investment to realize a greater impact. Next slide, please. So to put a finer point on it, proposals must be bold ideas that benefit multiple organizations, build stronger shared infrastructure, and/or have the potential to impact the sector at large. We are not here to fund proposals that fill a budget shortfall, only serve one news organization, or is not focused on how we move the sector forward. Additionally, we expect all applicants to have some type of resources contributed towards this project, such as staff time. Next slide, please. So going back to the 4 funding categories of audience, people, operations, and revenue, here are some examples of proposals that we might see. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, and we welcome ideas that fit within these funding areas. So under audience, here we might see applications that are focused on methodologies, technology, and tools that enable news organizations to attract new audiences, diversify their existing audience base, and/or deepen relationships with existing ones. This may include experimental audience-facing approaches or technical infrastructure. Under the category of people, applications here might include programs or solutions that bolster the talent pipeline and encourage a diversity of perspectives in the newsroom. This might include professional development, training programs, organizational design, improved workplace culture, or communities of practice. Next slide, please. And under operations, we might see applications focused on ideas or solutions that directly impact critical business functions that are not related to editorial production. This includes accounting, human resources, governance, legal support, financial planning, and other activities that enable newsrooms to operate resiliently. And finally, under the category of revenue, applications here might focus on methodologies or tools that can help news organizations generate revenue or diversify their revenue streams. This might include shared positions, shared ad sales, sources of earned income, impact investing, B2B partnerships, licensing, corporate support, or reader revenue. Next, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Melissa, to talk about eligibility.
Thanks, Christina. So, who is eligible to apply for this grant? If you are a journalism support organization, a news organization that is already working with others or plans to work with others to tackle a challenge that is common to the field, or a multi-partner coalition, such as a regional collaboration or a newsroom practitioner/university partnership, you can apply. Applicants can be at the local, regional, statewide, or national level as long as they fit within these 3 categories of eligibility. Also, across the board, all applications must be submitted by a nonprofit 501c3. Fiscal sponsors can apply on behalf of a group of organizations, but not on behalf of a single for-profit organization, which brings us to the next slide. Who is not eligible to apply for this open call? We've received quite a few questions already as to why for-profits are not eligible to apply. Actually, they can. For-profit service providers for for-profit newsrooms, for-profit service providers or for-profit newsrooms can be part of a multi-partner application, but the lead applicant for every proposal must be a nonprofit organization. Why? The priorities for this open call are to invest in solutions that demonstrate strong demand from local newsrooms and will provide clear benefits to the communities they serve. In addition, if you already have a grant from the pooled fund, or if you're based outside of the US, you are not eligible. Now I'll hand it back to Christina to talk about our multi-step application process.
Thank you, Melissa. Next slide. So for this open call, we are taking a phased application approach. Rather than having everyone submit a comprehensive application upfront, we are currently inviting people to submit letters of interest, LOIs. These are due January 15th. Next slide. So a friendly reminder, all of these questions can be found in your program guidelines. Every LOI should be able to answer the 6 questions on the left. And you can see that we actually have some word limits. We are asking for the high level vision. You must pick one of the 4 categories when you apply. Even if you're addressing multiple areas, pick one that you are primarily addressing. And I also want to say we received some questions that people are working on multiple proposals. You can only submit one. We understand that there may be collaborations that you want to be a part of, but I encourage you to think about your core competency, your capacity, and your expertise, and think about the partnership that makes sense for you. So I am just going to call out the second question here, which is, what is a common challenge you plan to address and how? Here, you need to describe the problem that you're trying to solve. You must include data and evidence of the problem and how you understand its scale. You also must include data and evidence of the demand for the solution that you're proposing. So show us your work, tell us what information and data points will drive your decision-making and your proposed ideas. On the right-hand side, you can see our evaluation criteria for the LOI stage. We're going to be looking at project relevance, project feasibility, team impact, makeup, and potential impact. Again, all of this information can be found in our program guidelines. From now until January, you have a long lead time. This is the time to do your homework. Take advantage of this time to survey, research, and gather the data you need to strengthen your LOI. Think about who your partners might be on this project and initiate exploratory conversations with them to confirm if they're on board if you are invited to submit a full application later. All right, next slide, please. LOIs will be reviewed by our team and external reviewers that have subject matter expertise, and top scoring LOIs will be advanced to phase 2. In February, we will invite select applicants to submit full proposals, which will be due in March. At this stage, we will also be offering technical assistance and coaching to applicants. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the full proposal questions. However, we want to give you a preview into everything that is expected. If you're invited to this phase, you'll be expected to go deeper and expand upon the ideas outlined in your LOIs. You'll be asked to elaborate on the challenge and solution that you're proposing and which metrics you will use to measure success. The turnaround time here is shorter. So as a thought exercise in the LOI phase, you might want to try to answer these questions in the full proposal. Even though the LOI is shorter, it is good to have your ideas fleshed out. And I also want to point out this question in detail in question 4. We recognize that large-scale solutions often require buy-in from multiple partners, so help us understand the details of your partnership. We're also asking for signed commitment letters from these folks in your collaboration. Ideally, you shouldn't even submit an LOI without having talked to your potential partners. As far as attachments, you'll be required to provide detailed project plans, timelines, and budgets. Next slide. And here is the evaluation criteria for full proposals. Again, I won't go into all the details, but remember, we are looking for bold ideas that will impact the sector at large. So we need to understand how you are making sense of the field's challenges, its demands, and how all of this informs your proposed solutions. And next slide, please. And finally, our team and reviewer committee will review full proposals and may invite applicants to an interview. We expect to announce grant awards by late spring of next year. Next slide, please. So this is not the only time that you'll be able to ask your questions. We will be coming together again on December 17th and January 8th for FAQs that we have been receiving and a chance for you all to ask your burning questions to us before the January 15th deadline. If anything comes to mind, or if you have a question specific to your organization, please email grants@pressforward.news. Next slide, please. All right, so this brings us through the bulk of our presentation, and we are now going to open up for Q&A. I'm going to invite Lindsay Linzer, the VP of Community Investments at the Miami Foundation, to help facilitate the Q&A. Lindsay and her team at the Miami Foundation, they are really the backbone and home for Press Forward, and we're grateful for them for all of their support. All right.
Thank you, Christina. Happy to be here with you all. Happy Friday. Thank you for all of the questions. We are doing our best to put the answers in the chat, but we're going to lift up some of the questions that we think it'll be really helpful for everyone to hear the answers to. We know this is complicated, and we want to make sure that you all feel really clear heading into starting out your application. So first question, I'm going to hand it over to you, Dale. Could you define infrastructure?
Actually, I'm going to let Christina define infrastructure.
Perfect.
So infrastructure on the 4 pillars, it's really about accelerating the enabling environment for news production and dissemination. So this is really, what are all the tools and support systems that local newsrooms need to do their work? And there are examples. We highlighted a blog post. If you want to see, it can be investing in the journalism support organizations that bring everybody together. It can also be some shared technology and tools that help everybody run a little bit more efficiently. These are examples of the infrastructure. So really taking a step up, going beyond the newsroom and looking at what are the shared challenges and what are the shared support systems that lift everyone up.
Perfect, Christina. And so kind of doubling down on that question, what are this more specific objectives of this grant? What will this funding enable?
Yeah, I'll answer that one. The thing we hear all the time when we go out into the field is that it is hard to start these types of entities and it is hard to sustain them. In any industry, you have to figure out the plumbing that is behind the wall that helps the house operate. This is about that plumbing. What are the things that the industry needs or could use or should experiment with to figure out ways? I want to give a great example in Colorado. Maybe Melissa should give the example because it's her example, where there were going to be no printing presses left, but they still needed a printing press. They figured out a way to come together in Colorado with help of philanthropy to create or buy one printing press to support many different outlets in the state. That's plumbing that is going to help everybody do their job better. That's a physical example of infrastructure. Think of things like that. Not, unfortunately, with this open call, filling the budget gap of one particular organization, serving just one organization. This is about field building and really about figuring out how to support more than less in terms of the number of groups in the space.
Perfect. Thank you, Dale. Really appreciate that. So earlier this year in the summer, Press Forward started talking about the next open call being related to ecosystem innovation. And that was the teaser. And now it's evolved into infrastructure. Can you share a little bit about the thinking behind that?
Yeah, of course. As you probably you can watch us in real time with Press Forward. We are evolving as we go. Frankly, we thought ecosystem innovation was going to be too broad, to be frank. And so we made a decision to make sure that we were focusing on the 4 pillars that we talk about all the time from the very beginning of Press Forward, before staff was even on board, is we talked about those 4 pillars. So we are making sure that our open calls are addressing those 4 pillars. Those other terms, ecosystem innovation, frankly, was too broad. We would have gotten too many applications. We can only handle so much. Thank you, Miami Foundation, for being our back office for all of this. So we narrowed it to infrastructure. So that's the answer for that one.
Perfect, thank you. And Christina, I know you shared before some examples of like things that might be funded through this, but can you just slow down and share them again so it really sinks in with everybody, the types of things that we're potentially going to fund through this open call?
Yeah. So again, going through, the categories of audience, we're thinking about how can newsrooms attract new audiences and deepen relationships with existing ones. We know many of you are working on this. You may have some, methodologies that others can learn from. You may have a tool that helps digital newsrooms reach audiences and build that top of the funnel. These might be to some of those examples. Under people, this is about how does the field become more attractive, diverse, inclusive, and sustainable. It could be skills training, professional development. It could be some type of program or community of practice that kind of moves talent through the pipeline. Maybe some type of recruitment or hiring initiative that's out there. Under operations, this is really the plumbing. We have heard from many organizations they're really struggling with the necessary work to operate a newsroom, finances, accounting, HR, marketing, all of that. This is really where we might see collaborations, shared position, shared economies of scale programs that organizations can tap into. And then finally, with revenue, this is all about expanding or diversifying your revenue stream. It could be a pilot, tapping into a new revenue stream. It could be, some type of tool that all organizations need if they want to pursue ad sales or pursue corporate support or reader revenue. These are the types of projects that we might see. But again, as I said before, this is an exhaustive list. We also want to see the creativity and innovation that's coming from the field.
Can I add something here, Lindsay? In particular for this one, we will be using reviewers again to help us in the LOI process and in the application process. This will not just be coming from our staff and funders. And in particular, we're going to be looking for reviewers that are former publishers, that are in the field. This is not just about you have a great idea and you think some other portions of the field will want to use this. We want proof that you've done some history, some research. You've talked about this with some other partners. You've done some research to understand that this affects 10% of the field. And this is really something that they could do together to solve that issue. This is not just you think it is something that will be helpful. We want some proof that you've talked to people, you've done your research, that this is something that this field demands. That's some of the things we're going to be looking at as you apply for this.
Perfect, thank you. So I'm going to actually answer one question. We've got a number of questions in the chat that ask about eligibility and whether universities are eligible to apply. Yes, you are eligible as a university to apply, whether you have a 501c3 or you're a state university. State universities are considered 501c3 equivalents, and so you are eligible to apply. So we've answered a number of questions like that in the chat. So just wanted to clarify out loud for everybody out there that is representing the university that you are eligible to submit an application. We're getting a question in the chat about how do we know which of the kind of 4 categories within this open call we should apply in?
I think you really need to think about the project and the impact that you want to make. And again, what I said before about what is your expertise? What do you know? Where can you be that expert to drive this project forward? If you don't have any experience in HR, you might not want to submit an HR proposal in the operations bucket. I know that's a really obvious example, but just think about that. This is about experimentation and how you would be leading this project moving forward.
Perfect, thank you. So there's a lot of questions in the chat related to lead applicants and, what are you defining as a lead applicant? And can we also just re-clarify for the group whether an applicant can apply more than once or be part of multiple applications?
So think of the lead applicant as the conductor. They are receiving all of the money. They are the group that the Miami Foundation and Press Forward will be chatting with as this whole process goes through. If you end up getting a grant, they'll be the group that has to submit grant proposals. They are the group that we consider, if you're submitting on behalf of 5 other groups that you're working with, we consider you to be the conductor for that group. We will come to you and ask you questions if something goes wrong or if we hear something. Everybody's coming to you. The lead applicant is the person who receives the dollars and manages the project on behalf of everybody else. And many of you have probably been involved with collaboratives before, and we trust but verify. And so we want to make sure that you've got a proven and verifiable relationship with the groups. If you're going to apply on behalf of 4 or 5 other groups that you're working with, we're going to ask for partnership agreements to be able to see that you're not just doing this and you just say you have these collaborators, but they're collaborators in name only. So that's the lead applicant. You are doing the bulk of the work. Let's be clear. If you're a university, you would be sub-granting those dollars out to maybe 3 or 4 other groups, for example, that you are working with. So you've got to manage money if you are the lead applicant. That you have to be capable of managing that. The second one I'll give to you, Christina.
Can you repeat that question, Lindsay?
Yeah, so it's related to, can an organization be part of 2 applications? There's been some confusion both in the chat, and want to make sure that we're really clear with our audience about whether organizations can be part of multiple applications.
We are not encouraging that for the reasons of your subject matter expertise, your core competency, and your capacity. If we see your name appearing in multiple applications across different bucket areas, this is a sign to us. We might wonder, how do you want to make an impact on this grant opportunity? So the only time that we might see applications coming up from multiple applications coming from the same entity is if they fiscally sponsor other organizations. And it's this fiscally sponsored organization that is driving the project, but simply using their fiscal sponsor as the way to be able to submit the application.
Perfect, thank you. And so let's just clarify again. So we are accepting applications from fiscal sponsors. And so if a fiscal sponsor has multiple groups that they're sponsoring, they can apply multiple times in their role as fiscal sponsor. Is that correct?
Yes. And to be clear, the project is going to be driven by the fiscally sponsored organizations that are seeding and leading the idea.
Terrific. Thank you. This is really, really helpful. So we got some questions about universities. So oftentimes universities have multiple, media organizations, the radio station, the television station. Can a university apply multiple times?
Ooh, if you have, let's say you've got 3 different entities at your university, all involved in journalism. You've got a school of journalism, you've got a radio station, and you've got a center that studies journalism. I would not say that we would be in favor of all 3 of them applying separately. If the university said, we're going to apply and we're going to work with all of these entities together to, let me be clear, support the field, not just to support those individual organizations. You're going to be doing a project that other universities could copy, or that other universities could use to support their journalism schools and their, it's not just about your individual organization. Even if you're a university, it's got to be something that can spread throughout the field. So think about it that way. I hope that's helpful.
That's super helpful. And so a lot of questions, we've been talking a lot about collaboration as being a kind of a core part of this. So can you give some clarity on what is and isn't required in terms of collaboration? So there was, I think, a sentence that said the open call does not require collaboration, but a lot of the messaging says we're encouraging collaboration. So can we just dig into that a little bit, please?
So I'll start and Christina can add. there's going to be probably several different types, I would say, of things that involve collaboration. And we're open to, frankly, all of them. You could have, I'm just going to use, I'm trying not to name names, but you could have a journalism support organization, for example, where they are a membership organization and they have 200 members. They are going to apply, and there's not necessarily collaboration, but frankly, what they are going to try to do is going to support 50 of their members. That's field building. Or you could have 5 distinct organizations in a state, and they have been working together for several years on pick different issues, and they decide to come together on something that supports that state. That's collaboration, right? You could have a university, like we said earlier, that's a fiscal sponsor for some other type of groups that are working together. So it's not like everything will be collaboration, but everything will have to support something broader than your individual organization. Think like that. I hope that's helpful. You want to add anything, Christina?
No, that was great.
Really helpful. Thank you. So we've used the term journalism support organization. Can you explain what that means and give maybe a few examples of those? Like we got the specific question of whether the Racial Equity Fund in Journalism or Free Press are considered journalism support organizations.
Yeah, some people call it, you've kind of got a range of, I would call them groups in the middle. They don't often produce original news, right? They're not newsrooms or broadcast stations. So they're not producing original content, but they are supporting the field either as a membership organization or they are providing a service to a lot of different groups who have subscribed to them in some way. So we consider them all journalism support organizations. Sometimes they're called intermediaries. It depends on who you're talking to is what term they use. But we have somewhere between, I think we're still trying to count, 50 to 75 of those groups in the industry. So that could be everything from NABJ, right? The National Association of Black Broadcasters or whatever it is, newsrooms, to Lion, to INN, to smaller groups that support just in a state. You could be an intermediary, frankly. You could, so there's lots of those types of organizations. But let me be clear, we did not want to only allow some of those national intermediaries to apply. That's one level of intermediary or journalism. We know that there are state level, even in a big city, sometimes city level, organizations that sit in the middle between the reader and between the actual newsroom itself. So we wanted regional or state actors to be able to apply as well, in addition to like those larger national groups that some of us know and may be members of. I hope that's helpful.
Really helpful. Thank you. So tell us a little bit about the financial support. So what are the expectations in terms of like funding already being lined up for the project that's being proposed?
Yeah, in general, we are trying to not be the only dollars in the space. Even if it's in kind, we are expecting the organizations that apply, if it's a group of you, if it's 5 of you together, if it's a university, for example, on behalf of several groups, to have some skin in the game. Now that skin in the game could be financial resource, could be in-kind staffing. And if you've written a grant before, you all have done this before. We often put in-kind resources into the grant to say that a quarter of this person's time that we already employ is going to be applied to that grant. You're not giving more money to the new project, but you are providing money in the form of staff time. That's in kind. You may be providing, it may be something where you're going to be doing lots of facilitation amongst the different partners and the funding partners and other partners. And you are going to provide, for example, facilities and food for them to meet 10 times over the next year. That could be in-kind resources. But we also would love it, frankly, if there's some other dollars in the space. Of course, you've got either another funder who's willing to help support this, or you've got some of your own budget dollars that are willing to support this. The bottom line is, I want to say this carefully, we are trying to support opportunities where you think this is so important, you are willing to also put your own money into it or your own time. It's not just us Press Forward giving support for that particular opportunity. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, that is super helpful. So we also got some additional kind of questions on here about whether these have to be for new projects or if they can be for existing projects. So can we speak to that?
Yeah, we want both. We understand that some of this will be brand new things you're thinking of. You've been studying your part of the field for a while. You've got a sense of something that could work, and you've talked to enough people. You know there's a demand for this, and you want to help seed something new. But we also know, frankly, that you guys are already doing some things. You're doing some things right now that are working in your space. And now you could use these dollars to scale that into other spaces, not just be a bigger version for you, but be able to support other entities, other outlets in your area or in your part of the newsroom. Maybe you're all climate funders, climate newsrooms, for example, and there's something in that particular area that you're supporting that could help those people that are doing that type of work. So we're open to both existing things that could and should be scaled up and made bigger, and new things, because we know some of you guys are ridiculously creative, and we're looking forward to reading those proposals.
I'd also say with the existing ideas, it could be an iteration. What did you learn that needs tweaking and modification to have a greater impact? So again, walk us through that story, help us understand the data that is driving this new phase of this idea.
Yep, really helpful. Thank you. So some logistical questions, like how many of the LOIs you received are actually going to be selected to submit full proposals?
So we don't know. It will all depend on what comes in and the quality, the application, the LOIs, and how they look across the whole applicant pool. I know that's not a satisfying answer, but it's the truth.
That's fair, and we appreciate you sharing. We
But
don't
I
have
think,
all the answers.
right, but I think we said in the program guidelines that we expect to make somewhere between 20 and 25 grants.
20 to
And
30
so,
grants.
20
So
to
every
30
stage,
grants.
you can
Right.
expect the pool to get smaller and smaller as we get to every stage.
perfect, really helpful. Thank you. And so then, in the guidelines, we talk about that the grants will be divided among the pillars. Will it be equal? Will it not? How are we going to
Yeah.
distribute it? Can you
Yeah,
speak to that a little bit?
let's be clear. We don't know yet. We're going to see what comes in. If so many things come in the revenue side and not enough comes in the people side, we may end up doing a lot in revenue, because that's telling us that there's a need in that space, to be honest, or there's a lot of creativity in that space. So we're kind of leaving it open. We would love to fund at least 2 or 3 applications per those 4 categories. Beyond that, I think we're going to see what comes in.
That's really helpful. Thank you. So working with, how would you define, there's some language about a newsroom versus a for-profit newsroom. Can you speak to that a little bit, and the fact that for-profits are not allowed to be lead applicants?
Christine, I'm going to let you answer that.
Yes. So the difference, let me just break down the difference between our first open call, where we did invite for-profit newsrooms to apply, and this open call, is that the scale and scope of this open call is a lot different. This isn't about us, not recognizing the value and important role that local for-profit newsrooms play in the community, but when we're thinking about solutions and ideas that may impact the sector at large, we are potentially going to fund a mix of different organizations. And in this case, this is a decision that we're making with how we're going to drive our philanthropic dollars. The lead applicant, the one that is managing the money, needs to be a nonprofit organization. As Dale said, if this is a collaboration that might work with for-profit newsrooms, there is a way for for-profits to be able to be part of the application and to be part of the project. But again, the lead applicant must be a 501c3.
Perfect. And then just doubling down on who the applicants can be. There's still a bit of confusion, and I think it's probably because we're talking about fiscal sponsors and whether people can submit multiple applications. Can we clarify again? Can an organization be a lead applicant on an application as well as a partner on a separate application?
So as we have done in all of our open calls, it's only our second one, we adjust as we go. I will just say this. It is probably rare that we are going to give those 20 to 30 final grants to someone who is both a lead applicant on one and a partner in another. Choose your best and highest usage of your time. We're not we may let some of them in, frankly, but I'm just letting you know we want to spread this amongst lots of different organizations and amongst lots of different ideas. And so unless you are fabulous, 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 I cannot envision a time where you will get a grant both as a lead applicant and as a partner on another application. We are trying really hard to make sure we are giving this money out to as many different types of organizations as possible.
That's really helpful. Thank you. So one other question, we're a collaborative organization by nature. So generally, like, we work with many news organizations, but then do we need to establish another collaboration outside of the central kind of collaboration approach our organization already takes?
No, if you already have a collaborative group that you work with, and it's, you've got a history of doing work with them, apply on their behalf. That's fine. You don't have to create new partnerships for this if you already have partnerships. Just work with those partners on what you want to submit.
Yep, perfect. That's really helpful. Okay, we've answered most of these questions. So we got some questions in here about kind of under operations and the idea of sharing staff. Can you confirm, does that include sharing editorial staff?
Christina?
No, so the operations bucket is about everything that is not related to editorial production. So the HR, the accounting, the financial planning, the legal support, that is the category of operations. Now, I will say, if you look at the audience category, just because audience and editorial is so closely linked in many newsrooms, that might be the bucket where you might see a little bit more of a gray area. But again, it really has to be focused on how this project will help news organizations expand their audience, diversify their existing audience base, or deepen the relationship.
Perfect, thank you. Can you share with the group, I know we shared a little bit before, but maybe some more examples of what a successful applicant's project might look like? And know that we hope to fund many projects, and so there won't be one model, but could we offer a few more examples for the audience?
Melissa, you got some more?
Could you say the question again? I was answering in the chat.
Examples of successful applications.
Oh,
I used your printing press one, sorry.
yeah. Well, I guess we've seen a lot of really good, collaborations in place-based collaborations, where you're sharing staff that is not editorial. There's some revenue sharing models out there. There's a lot of great activity in the journalism support organization space. I don't know if that's helpful. I feel like Christina said most of mine.
I'll give another one. You could be a group of, it could be different things, but I'm gonna say this one. You could be a group of Spanish language organizations in the news space. You could be newsrooms themselves. You could be working with a intermediary that's also helping you out, and it's like 6 of you that are in one state. Pick a state, Texas, and you are figuring out or have figured out a way to digitally get to a broader audience. You figured out a better way, or you're close to figuring out a better way to serving a large swath of population that's not been served before by you all. And you're going to work together to figure out how to do that. And you're going to use some specific tools. You're going to use some specific tech, or you're going to use, I don't know, some specific way of getting to people, more WhatsApp or things like that. But you're going to work together to do that. And if you do that in your state, what you do, and we're going to study everything that we support, by the way. It could be shared in other states, right? Other Spanish language news organizations could figure out how to do that in their state. So think about things that are broader than your particular one outlet.
And also, like, think about, this is a 2 or 3 year grant, you know, so you don't have to do everything in year one. Like, how does your idea grow, you know, and change? So, and what do you want to learn from it? And how will the field learn? Like, if you can answer those questions, you know, you're on the way to a strong proposal.
Perfect.
And
Really,
can I just say, we purposely made these multi-year grants because we understand two things. When you focus on infrastructure, you never fix it in 1 year. It always takes longer for any industry, frankly. And if you do encourage collaboration, those collaborations are not always easy. It takes a while to build trust if you've not been partnering with those groups before. And we know it takes a while to do that, to build tables where you're working together and then to test out whatever your idea is. So we purposely built in these grants to be 2 to 3 year grants.
Yeah, and I don't know if did we talk about this already, but the you know, the time between now and when you submit your LOI is like a great time to be thinking about these. Yeah. So
Yeah, start putting feelers out there, lining up who is going to be part of your team. Even take time to collect data or survey folks, because again, in terms of what makes a successful proposal, I really encourage you all to review the evaluation criteria and the details of the program guidelines. On LOI, question 2, we need to know evidence of the problem and evidence of the demand of the potential solution.
Let me give another example. People always want examples. We still have, even with this open call, we still have places in the country that don't have newsrooms, right? We still have places that are closing. If you've got an idea with a group of other people or a group of other outlets on how to get at some of those rural places, so you are a big newsroom in one place and you're maybe figuring out how to support digitally some other group, or groups of places that don't have that. If the great example, but it's already funded, thank you to the Knight Foundation, is the dollars that went to the University of Vermont that are going to help other colleges figure out how to build in newsrooms into those colleges in places where there's no news right now, right? That's infrastructure. That's helping more than your individual outlet do something that will benefit the field. So think about things like that.
I'll share another example in the revenue category. You may be a group of organizations working in the same region and you all find that you're going to the same donors. Maybe you pull together to figure out how can you tap into other revenue streams, whether it is getting local businesses to support you all from an advertising or corporate support perspective. So really, again, thinking about what are the things that you're doing that others can learn from in different parts of the country?
helpful. Thank you. So we got some questions about the kind of for-profit newsroom. So the questions of like, can a group of kind of for-profit newsrooms come together? And if we get a fiscal sponsor, like, can we apply with that model? Can you explain a little bit more about the intention behind an organization that is actually leveraging a fiscal sponsor to apply?
I'm gonna let Christina take that one.
Yeah. So in this case, if you are a group of organizations working together that need a fiscal sponsor, yes, this would qualify. You know, Melissa's remarks earlier, she said this is not about funneling money to a for-profit venture or a for-profit, tech company that might be servicing the industry. This is still the spirit of this, is understanding the demands and the needs of the local news sector and some of the solutions that will help address those needs.
yeah, and just to be clear, I think the question that Lindsay, you might have brought up is in the chat, it said, could a for-profit company that runs a bunch of for-profit newsrooms apply with a fiscal sponsor to support that group of for-profit newsrooms? And the answer is no. Right. So that's.
Yep. Thank you. So we got some questions about whether local chapters were eligible to apply if they received a Catalyst grant from Press Forward.
No.
So chapters are not allowed to. Yeah, chapters are not allowed to apply. But if we have told chapters, if there are newsrooms in your area that are trying to work together on an application and they need a fiscal sponsor, chapters can serve as that fiscal sponsor, but just it's really a technical role. The project still needs to be driven by the news organizations. So chapters cannot submit their own ideas, but they can help aid the newsrooms in their communities.
Perfect. A lightning round of a few more questions before we end in just a few minutes. So what will the size of the grants be and over what period of time?
So grants are going to be between $500,000 to $1.5 million, and average grant periods will be 2 to 3 years.
Great. What about projects related to civic information and not traditional news? Would that qualify?
I think it goes back to the evaluation criteria and program guidelines. Let us know how this fits into the buckets and how you will answer these questions and follow the evaluation criteria.
But I'm assuming that would be in the bucket of audience. If you have ways of engaging audience that includes the civic nature of a community or communities, yeah, that would apply. It goes to the audience bucket.
Terrific. Thank you. We have a lot of questions and I think we've answered most of them. A lot of them seem to be duplicates, and we know there's going to be some specific questions. And so we encourage this group, if you have specific questions, send them to grants@pressforward.org. That's going to be the best place to get an answer to your
News.
questions. Yeah, go
Grants
ahead.
at pressforward.news.
Sorry, .news. I'm so used to saying .org. grants@pressforward.news. We will make sure everybody has a copy of this recording after today's session. We'll reshare the program guidelines. We're going to have that additional Q&A session. We want to be here as a resource. We know this is very different than our last open call, and so we appreciate that many folks who attended last time came out to hear what this open call is all about, and we want to get your questions answered. We still have almost 200 in the queue, but a lot of them, again, are duplicates of what we've already answered. So this is recorded, and we'll make sure that if the same questions keep coming up, we will put out a blog post to the field and make sure you have the answers again very clearly for you. And there are some, there's Q&A in our program guidelines. So please review the program guidelines closely before you start working on your proposals. Any closing thoughts, Dale and Christina?
We still have 2 more opportunities before LOIs are due, December 17th and January 8th. All of those details and the registration links can be found on the website, pressforward.news/opencall.
Thank you all for what you're doing for us. We really appreciate you being on this call, for paying attention. And just know this is not the only time, once again, that we'll be coming to you to offer these types of resources. This is just the next one. And we also still have all of our line funders, and we're working with them to be able, by the way, to get out information of what they're currently funding, so you have a sense of who you can go to in the future.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a great weekend.